It's episode 2, everyone. In this episode, we covered the further progress of the old 6.7 and what we did with the body panel assembly and the parts that was included in that, and some lessons learned on the brake system that we ran across, and I'll share that with you as well. We also cover the beginnings of the fuel system rebuild, and then we find an uh-oh with the motor after we disassembled it, getting ready for the rebuild. So stay tuned, and let's start the fun. Alright, so continuing with our project, what you're looking at here is splash guards that goes in the fenders. There's one behind the headlight, one that goes on the end of the fender right before the door. So the struggle with these are the rubber seals have to be attached to them by staples. Now, later years are clips or bolts, but in this year it's staples. Well, we didn't have that kind of a powerful gun, so we drilled holes and then we pulled the staples through and clamped them together, and that's how we attached them. And then we was able to bolt the fenders onto the old 67. Now, once the parts like the fenders and the front end pieces and the stone guards started to come together on the car, it actually began to look like a vehicle. And once the visual stimuli, I guess, kicked in, I started really working a lot more hours on the car, trying to just make forward progress because I was getting excited as it really, started to come together. The headlight pieces and the stone guards and the apron that's between them, that's all pot metal. That's very delicate, and unfortunately there was a couple pieces where those broke, where the bolts went through, but we were able to get it assembled. We had to do some finagling to get things to line up properly, and luckily some of these parts where it's obvious they weren't put together where the paint was before are all covered by trim, so nobody really knows. But we got the trim on. We started with the grill here, and I just got to say, God bless Bob Moran, because when I started kicking in overdrive on this car, he continued to stick with me and come over and help, even on days when I'm like, man, I know you're tired, don't come over, but I'll handle the stuff by myself. But he stuck with it and stuck with me, and he put in as much time, double time on it as I did. So we'll continue to roll through these pictures here as you see the assembly. Now here's something that's noteworthy. So the buckets for the taillights, as we were getting ready to assemble them, we realized that they had rusted over the years, and we knew that was going to make the taillights dim. So what I did is I took a wire wheel basically and brushed for the drill and went through it and polished them all up, and it really turned out nice. We discussed about maybe painting it white, but I elected to leave it alone, and the taillights actually are pretty bright right now, so I'm pretty happy with the way they turned out after cleaning up those buckets. Now, Bob had the same issue and concern on his 66, so he took his buckets out, and after cleaning them, he did basically porcelain white and then put them back together, and they turned out really good. So that's another option for you if you're wanting to clean those buckets up and maybe put some protection on it. Porcelain white would be great for brightening up those taillights. Here we're redoing the third member in the rear axle. Now, it had broke once before, and we replaced it, ended up upgrading to a 355 posi. And as it sat, it leaked, and we thought maybe the gasket was bad. Well, we took the third member apart, found out there was no gasket. Now, maybe that's practice. I know on some parts, like the valleys of an intake, most people throw the gaskets away and just put the RTV. Well, in this case, I don't think that was appropriate. Not sure the person who put the third member in with me, I thought the gasket was included, but it wasn't. So we ended up putting a new gasket in, and we also put new gaskets in on the side, the axle, where the axle shafts go in, and wheel bearings. We put new seals there. Also, the pinion seal was bad, and it's great because the videos just say, oh, just, tap it out and it just falls right out. Well, it doesn't. We destroyed that seal trying to get it out of there. Of course, we were trying to be very careful of the races. We knew they were fine. It was just the seal was bad, but we did prevail, and we got a new seal in there. And now we continue with the assembly of the car and the cosmetic pieces. Alright, so of course, as part of the project, we replaced the entire brake system. This is the old mass cylinder, here's the new mass cylinder. Now, be aware that these aftermarket parts, I'm sure most people already know this, are not made to the same tolerance and specs as the old equipment. I never had this problem before, but when we put the master cylinder in, the brakes locked up. And we put 2 master cylinders in, the brakes locked up, and we couldn't get the brake lights to come off. So what ended up being the secret here was learning that the push rod was just made too far out of spec. So a friend of ours suggested putting spacers between the firewall and the master cylinder and continue to pull it out, leave it hooked to the brake light switch, and then when we get to that point where the brake light switch is coming on and off like it's supposed to, lock it into place, test drive it, see how the brakes do. Well, that was the answer. So basically, push rod wasn't coming all the way back out, wasn't allowing the pressure to release, would lock the brakes, turn on the brake lights, and then the car was pretty much at a dead stop. What I'm showing here is the new lines from Classic Industries, and I just want to highlight here, we put these all in, they're all pre-flared, and then we had a leak at this junction, and we called Classic Industries, and they gave us the manufacturer's name and number, called them and told them what was going on, and he said, hey, this is what you do, just tighten it as far as you can and then back it off. Tighten it again. Do this about 6, 7, 8 times, and then that flare will reform and it'll stop the leak. Well, he was absolutely right. It did, and the brakes have been working fantastic, leak-free. All right, what am I focusing in on here? This is the hub. We couldn't get the drum back on. I couldn't figure it out. It came off. Why don't it go back on? Well, then I remembered I got mad one night because the passenger side axle shaft would not come out. No matter what we did, we were using a slide hammer. We were using the brake drum as a slide hammer. And at the end of the day, I wailed the crap out of it with a sledgehammer till it finally come out, knocked it loose. Well, I out around the hub. So we had to file it down to get the drum back on, but it worked out fine. And what we're looking at here is replacing the fuel line with stainless steel line back to the tank and of course across the axle. All new brake lines here. The biggest struggle was putting in the junction up at the top of the axle, but after some fighting we got it put in without any problems. I want to make sure that I mention here, when you're ordering your brake line, especially the stainless steel for your 67, make sure you know if you have an early production model 67 or a late production model 67. It matters because the brake lines that run across the firewall are run differently and they mount in different locations. So just know that when you're ordering these lines, know your production date, because they are going to ask and you'll want to order the right stuff. Alright, so here's the 289 V8 that we were going to rebuild for the 67. Now, the 67 did not come with its original 289 or C4. Unfortunately, somewhere along the line, they probably detonated or were damaged. And anyways, a 65 block was put in its place, and a 1970 C4 transmission was put in. Now, this was a original factory manual 3-speed, but it got converted at some point in time before we got a hold of it. So we disassembled the engine. We knew that the head gasket had issues. We had some cooling problems with it before we pulled it, and my suspicions were realized, or confirmed I should say, once we pulled the head on the motor. After we've got the motor pulled apart, I bought the gauges to measure the bore to see if they were out of round or what the diameters were. I came up, after measuring 6 different points each bore, that it was 35 thousandths out. We thought we could save the block, but we learned different. Once the block was completely disassembled, we sent it out to one of our local performance shops to boil the block out. And we found out that, unfortunately, we had a problem. Stay tuned for episode 3, where we'll expose the problem that we learned about the motor and the hurdle that we had to overcome, and further progress on transmission rebuild and getting the car to driving status. Hope you enjoyed watching this episode. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you, and have a blessed day.